Tallies had never known true fear until that moment. She stood in the observatory of Colony 7, her thin fingers shaking as she stared at the scanner display. The numbers made no sense. They could not be real, but she checked them again and again, and each time they told her the same terrible truth. 3,000 ships. The Ravok swarm was coming. She was young for a Velari, barely 40 cycles old. Her people lived for 300 cycles on average, so she was like a child in many ways. But she was smart enough to know what those ships meant. She had read the histories. She had seen the images of dead worlds, planets stripped of all life, oceans turned to poison, cities reduced to dust. The Ravok did not conquer, they consumed. Tallies ran through the corridors of the science building, her hollow bones light in the colony's low gravity. The Velori had evolved on a paradise world where the sun was gentle and the wind was soft. Their bodies were delicate and beautiful, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They stood only as tall as a human child, and they weighed almost nothing. They had never needed to fight. They had never needed to run. Their world had no predators, no wars, no violence. The Velori had spent their entire history studying the stars, creating art and building peaceful communities across the galaxy. Now that peace was about to end. Elder Kiva was in the council chamber when Tallies burst through the doors. He was old, over 270 cycles, and his skin had faded to a soft gray. But his eyes were still sharp, and they widened as he saw the fear on Tallies' face. "What is it, child?" he asked. Tallies could barely speak. She held up her data pad with trembling hands. "The Ravok," she whispered. "They are coming, 3,000 ships. They will be here in 16 hours." The room went silent. There were 12 council members present, and every one of them understood what Tallies was saying. Some began to weep quietly. Others simply stared at the floor, accepting what could not be changed. Elder Kiva took the data pad and studied the information. His face showed no emotion, but Tallies could see his hands shaking just like hers. "Have you contacted the Galactic Union?" he asked. "Yes," Tallies said. "No response. They are too far away. Even if they sent ships immediately, they would arrive 3 days after the Ravok." "What about the other colonies, the trading vessels?" "I contacted everyone within range." Tallies felt the tears coming now. "No one will come. They are all afraid. The Ravok have never been stopped. Everyone knows this." Kiva was quiet for a long moment. The other council members looked at him, waiting for wisdom, waiting for hope. But there was no hope to give. The Velori had no weapons. They had no military. They had never needed such things. Colony 7 held 40,000 people, families, children, artists and scientists and teachers. All of them would die in 16 hours. "There is one other option," said a voice from the corner of the room. Everyone turned to look at Myra, Kiva's daughter. She was young like Tallies, with the same large dark eyes, but there was something different in her expression. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. "The humans," Myra said. The room grew even more silent than before. Several council members made gestures of fear, touching their foreheads in the old way meant to ward off evil. "The Deathworlders," one of them whispered, "you cannot be serious." "They are closer than anyone else," Myra continued. "Their deep space station is only 4 hours away by signal. If they chose to help, they could arrive before the Ravok." "If they chose to help, they would kill us themselves," another council member said. "Have you seen what their world is like? Their planet is a nightmare. The gravity alone would crush us. They have predators that hunt for pleasure. Their bodies are built to destroy." "They have never harmed anyone in the Galactic Union," Myra argued. "Because everyone stays away from them. They are monsters, Myra. The only species classified as a Class 12 Deathworld civilization. Their children play games that would kill our strongest warriors." Elder Kiva raised his hand for silence. The room obeyed. He looked at his daughter with tired eyes, then turned to Tallies. What do you think, young one? You study alien species. What do you know of humans? Tallies took a deep breath. I know they are dangerous, she admitted. Everything about them is dangerous. They evolved on a world where survival required constant violence. They are strong beyond measure, fast beyond reason, and they can survive injuries that would kill any other species in the galaxy. Then why would we call them? A council member demanded. Because, Tally said slowly, I also know something else about them. In 150 years of membership in the Galactic Union, they have never started a war. They have never attacked anyone. They keep to themselves, yes, but when other species have been in danger near their territory, humans have helped. They saved a Quarren trading vessel from pirates 20 years ago. They rescued survivors from the telemining disaster. They ask for nothing in return. Stories, someone muttered. Propaganda. Perhaps, Tallies agreed. But we have no other choice. We can die waiting for no one, or we can ask the Deathworlders for help and see what happens. Elder Kiva closed his eyes. For a long moment, he seemed to be praying to the ancestors. Then he opened his eyes and nodded once. Send the signal, he said. May the stars forgive us for what we are about to unleash. Tallies ran back to the observatory. Her hands were still shaking as she activated the emergency transmitter. She set the frequency to the one listed in the Galactic Union database as Human Emergency Channel, use only in extreme circumstances. She attached all the data about the Ravok fleet, the ship counts, the arrival time, the colony population. Then she recorded a simple message in the Galactic Common Language. This is Velori Colony 7. We are under attack by the Ravok swarm. 40,000 civilians. No military, no weapons. Please help us, please. She sent the signal and watched it fly into the darkness of space. Then she sat down and began to cry. 4 hours away, on Deep Space Listening Post Bikdu, a young officer named Jinwoo Choi was drinking his morning coffee when his console began to beep. He set down his cup and looked at the incoming transmission. His blood went cold. Jinwoo had served in the Terran Navy for 12 years. He had seen many things, but he had never seen a Ravok fleet of this size. 3,000 ships. It was an extinction-level force. He checked the source of the distress call. Velori Colony 7, 40,000 civilians. 16 hours until the swarm arrived. Jinwoo did not hesitate. He opened a priority channel to Fleet Command on Earth and transmitted everything. Then he added his own recommendation in 3 simple words. 20 minutes later, the message reached Earth. It passed through 7 levels of security before landing on the desk of Admiral Tiho Park, commander of Earth's first expeditionary fleet. The admiral was a large man even by human standards, with gray hair and a face that had seen too many battles. He read the distress call in silence. He watched the footage of the approaching swarm. He saw the fear in the young Velori's eyes as she begged for help. Then he looked up at his aide and spoke 3 words that would change the galaxy forever. Wake the Armada. The galaxy believed many things about humans. Most of those beliefs were rooted in fear. They knew that Earth was a death world, a planet so hostile that most species could not survive there for more than a few hours. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent. The animals were predators. Even the plants could kill. They knew that humans had evolved in this nightmare, becoming something terrible and powerful in the process. Human bones were dense like metal. Human muscles were strong enough to lift their own body weight with ease. Human immune systems could fight off diseases that would wipe out entire civilizations. But there was one thing the galaxy did not know about humans, one secret that Earth had kept hidden for 150 years. The galaxy believed that humanity had perhaps 200 military vessels, small patrol ships mostly, with a few cruisers for defense, nothing impressive, nothing threatening. The truth was very different. Dr. Sorahan stood on the observation deck of Luna Fleet Base and watched the awakening begin. She was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life. But today, she was not thinking about science. Today, she was thinking about what her species was about to reveal to the galaxy. Below her, in the massive construction yards carved into the moon's surface, ships were coming to life. Ships that had been listed as decommissioned in the public records. Ships that the Galactic Union believed had been scrapped decades ago. One by one, their lights came on. Their engines began to glow. Maintenance crews ran across their hulls, removing false panels that had hidden weapon arrays. Stealth plating retracted to reveal the true shape of the vessels beneath. They were not cargo ships. They were not passenger liners. They were weapons of war, built by a species that had spent its entire history fighting for survival. Sora felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Captain Yuna Kim standing beside her, already dressed in her command uniform. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Yuna said quietly. "Terrifying," Sora replied. Yuna smiled. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She did not look like a warrior, but Sora knew better. Yuna had commanded ships in 3 different conflicts against pirates and raiders. She had never lost a battle. "The Hanel is ready," Yuna said. "Admiral Park has given me command of the flagship." Sora looked up at the largest vessel in the fleet. The Hanel was 5 kilometers long, a mountain of metal and weapons and engines. It was the most powerful ship ever built by human hands, and it had been hidden in plain sight for 40 years, listed in the records as an orbital agriculture platform. "How many ships are we sending?" Sora asked. "All of them." Sora turned to stare at her friend. "All of them? That seems excessive for one colony." Yuna's expression grew serious. "It's not about the colony, it's about the message. The Ravok have been consuming civilizations for centuries. No one has ever stopped them. No one has ever tried. We are going to show the galaxy that there is something the Ravok should fear." Across the solar system, the same scene was repeating. On Mars, the great shipyards opened their hidden bays. Around Jupiter's moons, patrol vessels grouped into attack formations. In the asteroid belt, mining ships revealed themselves to be carriers loaded with fighter squadrons. The numbers grew larger with each passing hour. 47 dreadnought-class carriers, 312 battlecruisers, nearly 900 destroyers and frigates, over 2,000 fighter squadrons. And at the center of it all, the planet Crackers. 15 massive weapons platforms, each one capable of destroying a world with a single shot. They were illegal under Galactic Union law. They were supposed to have been dismantled 50 years ago. They had not been dismantled. They had been hidden, waiting for a day like this. On Earth, Sergeant Major Doyun Lee gathered his Marines in the training hall. They were the elite soldiers of the Terran military, men and women who had been born on Earth and trained in its crushing gravity their entire lives. Where other species grew weak and fragile on low-gravity worlds, humans on Earth grew strong. Doyun looked at his soldiers with pride. They were ready. They had always been ready. "Listen up," he said, his voice filling the hall. "We have a mission, a real mission, not training, not exercises. The Ravok swarm is attacking a Velori colony, 40,000 civilians with no way to defend themselves. We are going to save them." A murmur ran through the assembled Marines. They had heard stories about the Ravok. Everyone had. The swarm was considered unstoppable by every other species in the galaxy. But these were human Marines. They were not afraid. "The aliens think we are monsters," Doyun continued. "They think we are dangerous, violent, unpredictable. They hide from us, run from us, treat us like animals to be avoided." He paused and allowed himself a small smile. "Today we are going to show them what happens when monsters fight on the side of the innocent." The Marines cheered. The sound echoed off the walls like thunder. 4 hours after the distress signal was received, the Armada was assembled. Over 3,000 human vessels hung in formation around Earth, their weapons powered, their crews ready. Admiral Tiho Park stood on the bridge of the Hanwell, looking out at the fleet he commanded. Beside him, Captain Yuna was running final checks on all systems. "Fleet status?" the Admiral asked. "All vessels report ready," Yuna replied. "Hyperspace calculations are complete. We can jump on your command." Tiho nodded slowly. He thought about what they were about to do. For 150 years, humanity had hidden its true strength. They had pretended to be a minor power, a strange and isolated species that wanted nothing to do with galactic politics. But they had always been watching, always been preparing, because humans understood something that the peaceful species of the galaxy had forgotten. There were monsters in the darkness between stars, and someday someone would need to fight them. That day had come. "Open a channel to all ships," Tiho ordered. A moment later, his voice was being broadcast to every vessel in the fleet. "This is Admiral Park. In a few hours we will engage the Ravok swarm. For centuries the galaxy has feared us. They call us Deathworlders, they call us monsters, they avoid us, isolate us, treat us as something to be frightened of." He paused. "Today we will show them why." He looked out at the stars. The Velori are a peaceful people. They have no weapons, no soldiers, no way to fight. They called for help and everyone in the galaxy turned away. Everyone except us. Because we remember what it means to fight for survival. We remember what it means to protect those who cannot protect themselves. On 1,000 ships, crews listened in silence. The Ravok believe they are unstoppable. They have never faced an enemy willing to match their violence. They have never faced humans. Tiho's voice hardened. "We are about to teach them a lesson they will never forget. Fleet Command authorizes all weapons. No mercy, no hesitation. We answer the call." He closed the channel and turned to Yuna. "Take us to hyperspace." The Hanwell's engines roared to life. Around it, 3,000 other ships did the same. Space itself seemed to tear open as the hyperspace portals formed, great circles of blue-white energy that led to somewhere beyond normal reality. One by one, the ships of Earth's Armada entered the portals and vanished. The jump would take 6 hours. When they arrived, they would have 4 hours before the Ravok reached the colony. Plenty of time. On the hull of every ship, painted in the common language of the galaxy, was the same message: "We answer." Far away, on Velori Colony 7, Myra was monitoring the communication systems when she detected something strange. At first, she thought it was an error. The scanner was showing hyperspace signatures, but the numbers could not be right. She counted them, then she counted them again, then she called for her father. Elder Kiva entered the communication room and looked at the display. His old eyes widened. "Is that real?" he whispered. "Yes," Myra said. "Over 3,000 ships. They are coming from the direction of human space." Kiva stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, for the first time in many years, he began to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had expected death and found something else instead. "We called the Deathworlders," he said softly, "and they are bringing everything they have." Myra looked at her father with fear in her eyes. "Is that good?" Kiva did not answer for a long time. "I do not know," he finally said, "but I think the Ravok are about to find out." The shields were failing. Elder Kiva stood in the underground shelter with his people, listening to the sounds of destruction above. The Ravok bombardment had begun 2 hours ago, and already the colony's defenses were breaking apart. The shields, designed to protect against meteor strikes and solar radiation, were never meant to withstand military weapons. Around him, 40,000 Velori huddled in the darkness. Families held each other close. Parents tried to keep their children calm. Some prayed to the ancestors, their voices soft and trembling. Others simply waited in silence, accepting what was coming. Kiva had lived for 270 cycles. He had seen many things in his long life. but he had never felt so helpless. His daughter Myra appeared at his side, her face pale with fear and exhaustion. She had not slept since the crisis began. "Father," she whispered, "the human fleet, they should be arriving soon." "If they are coming at all," Kiva replied. "They said they were coming. The message said they would answer." Kiva looked at his daughter with tired eyes. "Perhaps they changed their minds. Perhaps it was a trick. We know nothing about these creatures except that the entire galaxy fears them." Above them, another explosion shook the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling. A child screamed somewhere in the darkness. On the surface, the Ravok fleet surrounded the colony like a cloud of death. Their ships were organic, grown rather than built, covered in thick chitin armor that made them look like insects from a nightmare. They moved with perfect coordination, guided by the collective mind of the swarm. At the center of the fleet was the command vessel, a massive living ship that contained the Overmind itself. The Overmind was not a single creature but a network of linked minds, a consciousness spread across thousands of bodies. It had consumed over 100 civilizations in its existence. It had never known defeat. The Velori were not even a challenge. They were simply food. The Overmind sent a command through the swarm: "Prepare the harvesting ships. The shields will fall within the hour. Begin the consumption." But then something changed. The scanner operators on the Ravok ships detected a massive energy surge at the edge of the system. Space itself seemed to twist and tear as hyperspace portals began to form. One portal, then 10, then 100. The Overmind felt a strange sensation it had not experienced in centuries: confusion. The portals kept appearing: 200, 500, 1,000. They filled the sky like flowers of deadly light. And then the ships began to emerge. Tally's was in the observatory when it happened. She had refused to go to the shelters, choosing instead to watch the end from where she could see the stars. If she was going to die, she wanted to die looking at the universe she loved. But what she saw made her forget about death entirely. The human ships were unlike anything in the galaxy. They were not elegant like Velori vessels. They were not organic like Ravok ships. They were hard and angular and covered in weapons. They looked like they had been designed by creatures who understood violence on a fundamental level. Because they had been. Tally's counted the ships as they emerged from hyperspace. She stopped counting at 2,000 because her mind could not process the numbers anymore. The human fleet was larger than any military force she had ever heard of, larger than the combined navies of 10 species. And they had brought it all, for 40,000 Velori they had never met. On the bridge of the Hanul, Admiral Tiho Park looked at the tactical display and assessed the situation. The Ravok fleet was arrayed around the colony in a standard siege formation. They had not expected anyone to answer the distress call. They were about to regret that assumption. "Open a channel," Tiho ordered. "All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this." The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Tiho stood tall and spoke clearly. His words were translated instantly into the Ravok language, the Velori language, and Galactic Common. "This is Admiral Tiho Park of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. To the Ravok swarm, you have attacked those under our protection. You have 30 seconds to retreat. This is your only warning." Silence hung in space for a long moment. Then the Overmind responded. Its voice came through the communication system like the sound of 1,000 insects speaking at once. "Human, we are the swarm. We have consumed 100 species. We have devoured worlds beyond counting. Your small fleet does not frighten us. Leave now and we may allow you to live." Tiho did not react to the threat. His expression remained calm and cold. "You have 20 seconds. The Overmind laughed. It was a horrible sound, the combined amusement of 1,000,000 linked minds. "You cannot defeat us, Deathworlder. No one can defeat us. We are eternal. We are hungry, and you have just added yourself to the menu." 10 seconds. Attack, the Overmind commanded. Destroy them all. 800 Ravok ships broke formation and charged toward the human fleet. They moved with perfect coordination, a wave of death that had never been stopped. Tiho watched them come. He waited until the countdown reached 0. Then he turned to Captain Yuna Kim. Weapons free. Yuna relayed the order to the fleet. All ships weapons free, fire at will. What happened next would be remembered in the history of every species in the galaxy. The human ships opened fire. Railgun projectiles traveling at 12% of the speed of light tore through Ravok ships like they were made of paper. Plasma lances burned through chitin armor in seconds. Missiles that could think and adapt hunted their targets with terrible precision. The first wave of Ravok ships, 800 strong, was destroyed in 90 seconds. Tally's watched from the observatory, her mouth hanging open in shock. She had studied human technology in school, but the records were clearly outdated. What she was seeing should not be possible. No species in the galaxy had weapons like this. But humans were not like any species in the galaxy. In the underground shelter, Myra heard the explosions change. They no longer sounded like bombardment. They sounded like battle. Something is happening, she said to her father. Elder Kiva closed his eyes and listened. Yes, he could hear it too. The rhythm of destruction was different now, faster, more violent. The humans, he whispered, they came. The Overmind was experiencing something it had not felt in over 1,000 years: fear. Its fleet was being destroyed at a rate that should not be possible. Human weapons were cutting through its ships like they were nothing. Human tactics were unpredictable, aggressive, unlike anything the swarm had encountered. The Overmind adapted. It ordered the remaining ships to reform, to use their superior numbers to overwhelm the human point defense systems. Suicide attacks, ramming maneuvers, anything to slow the slaughter. But humans did not slow down. They did not hesitate. They did not show mercy. Lieutenant Jinwoo Choi stood at the tactical station of the Hanwell, coordinating fleet defense with the calm efficiency of a man who had trained his entire life for this moment. His reflexes, honed by surviving on a death world, allowed him to track dozens of threats simultaneously. Multiple ramming attempts on Sector 7, he reported. Destroyers are intercepting. Casualties? Yuna asked. 2 frigates damaged, no losses. On the Ravok side, over 1,000 ships were already gone. Admiral Tiho watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The swarm was learning what it meant to face a true predator. Humans had not become the dominant species on Earth by being gentle. They had clawed their way to the top of a food chain filled with monsters. Now they were showing another monster what that meant. Admiral, Jinwoo said, I have located the Overmind's command ship. It is trying to retreat to the back of the formation. Tiho nodded. Signal Captain Kim, tell her we are going hunting. The Hanwell's engines roared to life as the massive flagship began to move forward. Around it, a squadron of battlecruisers formed a protective wedge. They were heading straight into the heart of the swarm. Other species would call this suicide. Humans called it Tuesday. As the Hanwell advanced, Tiho opened one more channel. This one was directed at the colony below. Velori Colony 7, this is Admiral Tiho Park. Help is here. Stay in your shelters. We will handle the rest. In the underground shelter, Myra heard the message through her portable communicator. She translated it for her father. Elder Kiva looked up at the ceiling, toward the battle raging in space above them. Thank you, he said softly, though he knew the humans could not hear him. Thank you for answering. Above them, the sky was filled with fire and death. But for the first time in hours, the Velori had hope. The Deathworlders had come, and they were not leaving until every Ravok ship was destroyed. The battle had been raging for 2 hours, and the Ravok swarm was learning the meaning of desperation. They had never faced an enemy like this. Every species they had consumed before had fought the same way. They would resist at first, then retreat, then beg for mercy. The pattern was always the same. The end was always the same. But humans did not follow the pattern. The Hanel pushed deeper into the swarm formation, its massive hull absorbing hits that would have destroyed any other vessel in the galaxy. Human ships did not break when they were damaged. They kept fighting. Their crews did not panic when outnumbered. They became more focused, more dangerous. The Overmind watched as another 300 of its ships were destroyed in a single coordinated strike. Human tactics were unlike anything in its vast memory. They attacked from unexpected angles. They sacrificed small advantages for decisive victories. They took risks that seemed insane but worked anyway. This was what it meant to fight a species that had evolved on a death world. Every human carried the instincts of a survivor, of a predator, of something that had learned to fight before it learned to walk. On the bridge of the Hanel, Captain Yuna Kim was conducting the battle like a symphony of destruction. Her voice was calm as she issued orders, directing squadrons with precision that would have been impossible for any other species. Destroyer Group 7, flank left. Carrier Group 3, launch fighters on my mark. Battle Cruiser Division, prepare for a breakthrough run. Lieutenant Jinwoo Choi monitored the tactical display, tracking thousands of individual ships across the battlefield. His mind processed information at speeds that would have overwhelmed most aliens. But Jinwoo was human. His brain had evolved to hunt, to track, to predict. The Overmind is moving its command ship behind a screen of heavy cruisers, Jinwoo reported. It is trying to escape. Admiral Tiho shook his head slowly. No, it is not going anywhere. Signal the planet crackers to move into position. I want that escape route closed. The planet crackers were the most devastating weapons in humanity's arsenal. Each one was capable of firing a focused beam of energy that could split a world in half. They were never meant to be used. They existed only as a threat, a last resort against enemies too terrible to fight any other way. Today, they were being used. The massive weapons platforms moved into position, their targeting systems locking onto the space behind the Ravok formation. They did not fire at ships. They fired at empty space, creating a wall of destruction that nothing could pass through. The Overmind felt the trap closing around it. For the first time in over 1,000 years, it felt something like panic. All ships, it commanded through the Hive link. Focus everything on the human flagship. Destroy it now. 500 Ravok ships turned and charged at the Hanel. They came from every direction, a swarm of death converging on a single target. Yuna smiled. They are doing exactly what we wanted, she said. All point defense systems activate. Show them what human engineering really looks like. The Hanel lit up like a star. Thousands of small weapons mounted across its hull began firing simultaneously, creating a sphere of destruction that nothing could penetrate. Railguns fired 10 times per second. Laser arrays swept across space like deadly searchlights. Missiles launched in continuous streams. The Ravok ships died by the dozens, then by the hundreds. They could not get close enough to damage the flagship. Every attack was stopped, every ship destroyed. But the swarm kept coming. That was what the Ravok did. They had always won through numbers, through endless waves of attackers that eventually overwhelmed any defense. They had never met humans before. On the lower decks of the Hanel, Sergeant Major Do-yeon Lee felt the ship shake as another wave of attacks was absorbed by the armor. He and his Marines were waiting in the boarding defense stations, ready for the moment the Ravok tried something different. That moment came sooner than expected. Breach in Section 12, the ship's computer announced. Hostile boarding parties detected. Do-yeon grinned. Finally, Marines move out. The Ravok boarding parties were terrifying creatures. They were twice the size of a human, covered in hard chitin armor with multiple limbs ending in razor-sharp claws. Their eyes were black and empty, showing no individual intelligence, only the collective hunger of the swarm. They had never been defeated in close combat. Their strength and speed made them unstoppable against every species they had faced. The Marines met them in the corridors of Section 12. The first Ravok warrior charged at Do-yun, its claws raised for a killing strike. Do-yun did not retreat. He stepped forward inside the creature's reach and hit it with a punch that cracked its chest plate. The Ravok stumbled back in shock. No creature it had ever faced could hit that hard. Its chitin armor was supposed to be unbreakable. But Do-yun had been born on Earth, in full gravity, and he had trained every day of his life to be stronger than anything the galaxy could throw at him. His bones were dense as stone. His muscles could lift 3 times his own weight. He was wearing powered armor that made him even more dangerous. He grabbed the stunned Ravok by its head and twisted. The creature died before it knew what had happened. Around him, the other Marines were doing the same. They fought in pairs, watching each other's backs, using tactics that had been perfected over thousands of years of human warfare. The Ravok had numbers. The humans had skill, strength, and an absolute refusal to die. The corridor became a slaughterhouse. Ravok bodies piled up so fast that the surviving attackers began to retreat. They sent a message through the hive link. The Deathworlders are too strong. We cannot defeat them. The Overmind received the message and felt something it had never felt before: doubt. On the bridge, Jinwoo reported the situation. Boarding parties have been eliminated. Marine casualties, 0. Admiral Tiho nodded. As expected, now let us end this. Dr. Han, do you have what I need? Dr. Sora Han had been working in the science section throughout the battle, analyzing every piece of data they could gather about the Ravok. She looked exhausted but triumphant. Yes, Admiral, I found it. The Overmind controls the swarm through a neural frequency, a specific wavelength that links all the minds together. If we can disrupt that frequency, the swarm will lose coordination. Can we weaponize it? We already have. I worked with Lieutenant Choi to create a targeted EMP cascade. It will scramble the neural link without destroying the individual Ravok. They will not die, but they will no longer be able to function as a collective. Tiho considered this for a moment. He could simply destroy every Ravok ship. His fleet had the firepower, but that was not who humans chose to be. Victory was certain. Mercy was optional. He chose mercy. Target the Overmind's command ship. Fire when ready. The Hanel's main weapon charged with a sound like thunder. A beam of blue-white energy lanced across space, striking the Overmind's vessel with perfect accuracy. The Ravok ship stopped. All of them at the same moment. They hung in space like puppets with their strings cut. The hive link was broken. The collective consciousness was shattered. 3,000 individual minds, freed for the first time in their existence, found themselves alone and confused. They began to drift. Some crashed into each other. Others simply powered down, their crews curling into themselves, overwhelmed by the experience of individual thought. The battle was over. On the Hanel's bridge, Yuna let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. All ships reporting in. Hostiles neutralized. Casualties: 23 vessels destroyed, 107 damaged. No total losses of crew. Admiral Tiho looked at the tactical display. The Ravok fleet, 3,000 strong, had been defeated by a force of equal size in just over 3 hours. It was the most decisive victory in galactic history. Signal all ships, Tiho said quietly. Battle is concluded. Begin rescue and humanitarian operations, and someone contact that colony. Tell them they are safe now. Down in the underground shelter, Myra received the message. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the communicator. Father, she said, tears running down her face. "Father, it is over. The humans won. We are safe." Elder Kiva closed his eyes and let his own tears fall. Around them, 40,000 Velori began to weep with relief and joy. Above them, the sky was full of human ships. The Deathworlders had come, and they had saved them all. The first human ship to land on Colony 7 was a medical transport called the Sunrise. It touched down gently in the central plaza, and its ramp lowered to reveal something the Velori had never seen with their own eyes. Humans. Dr. Sorahan led the first contact team. She had studied the Velori for years, knew their language, their customs, their fears. She understood that these fragile beings had spent the last several hours hiding from death, only to be saved by the species the entire galaxy called monsters. She moved slowly and spoke softly. "My name is Sorahan," she said in the Velori language. "We are here to help. Is anyone injured?" The Velori who had gathered to watch stared at her with wide, dark eyes. Sara was enormous by their standards, standing nearly twice their height. Her body was thick and muscular where theirs was thin and delicate. She looked like a predator from their worst nightmares. But her voice was gentle, and her hands carried medical supplies, not weapons. A young Velori child stepped forward, breaking away from her mother's grasp. She walked up to Sara and looked up at the human with curiosity instead of fear. "Are you a monster?" the child asked. Sara knelt down, bringing herself closer to the child's level. "I am a human," she said. "We come from a difficult world. Many species think we are scary, but we are not here to hurt you. We are here to help." The child considered this for a moment. Then she reached out and touched Sora's hand. Her tiny fingers felt like flower petals against Sora's rough skin. "Your hand is warm," the child said. Sora smiled. "Yes, we are warm-blooded. It helps us survive our world." The tension in the crowd began to break. More Velori stepped forward, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. The humans who followed Sara onto the surface were careful to move slowly, to speak quietly, to present themselves as helpers rather than conquerors. Within an hour, the medical teams were working throughout the colony. Human doctors treated injuries with technology far beyond what the Velori possessed. Engineers began repairing damaged buildings. Soldiers who had been killing Ravok an hour ago were now helping elderly Velori find their families. Elder Kiva watched it all from the doorway of the council hall. He had expected monsters. He had found something else entirely. Admiral Tiho Park came down from the Hanul to meet with the colony's leaders. He was a large man, broad and strong, with gray hair and a face that had seen many battles. But when he approached Elder Kiva, he moved with respect. And then he did something no alien had ever done in Kiva's long life. He knelt. The mighty admiral of the Terran Armada knelt before a frail old Velori, bringing himself down to eye level as a sign of humility and respect. "Elder Kiva," Tiho said, "I am Admiral Tiho Park. I am sorry we could not arrive sooner." Kiva stared at him in astonishment. "You saved us. You owe us no apology." "You called for help. That call should have been answered by many. It was only answered by us. That failure belongs to the galaxy, not to you." Kiva reached out and touched the Admiral's shoulder, a gesture of deep gratitude in Velori culture. "Why did you come? We are nothing to you, a small colony of a weak species on the edge of nowhere. You risked your fleet, your people, for us. Why?" Tiho looked at the old alien with steady eyes. "Because you asked." "That cannot be the only reason." "It is the only reason that matters." Tiho rose to his feet. "My people spent most of their history fighting each other. We caused terrible suffering. We made many mistakes, but we learned something from all that pain. We learned that the strong should protect the weak, that those who can help have a duty to do so. You called for help. We could help, so we came." Elder Kiva felt tears forming in his eyes. "The galaxy fears you. They say you are monsters." "Perhaps we are, But even monsters can choose what kind of monster they want to be. We choose to be the kind that protects the innocent. Tiho looked around at the colony, at the humans working side by side with Velori. We choose to be the kind of monster that other monsters fear. News of the Battle of Colony 7 spread across the galaxy within days. Species that had hidden from the Ravok for centuries learned that the swarm had been defeated, not just stopped, but utterly destroyed as a threat, and they learned who had done it. The humans, the Deathworlders, the most feared species in the Galactic Union. The Union Council summoned Admiral Tiho to their headquarters. Representatives from dozens of species waited to question him. Many were angry, many were afraid, all of them wanted answers. "Admiral Park," the council speaker said, "you have revealed that humanity possesses military capabilities far beyond what was reported to this council. You have broken galactic law by maintaining planet cracker weapons. You have conducted a military operation without council authorization. How do you respond to these charges?" Tiho stood before the council without fear. He had faced the Ravok swarm. A room full of politicians did not frighten him. "I respond with a question," he said. "When the Velori called for help, how many of you answered?" "Silence." "When 40,000 innocent people faced extinction, how many of your fleets mobilized to save them?" "More silence." "The Ravok have been consuming civilizations for centuries. How many of you have ever tried to stop them?" The council speaker shifted uncomfortably. "That is not the issue at hand." "It is exactly the issue at hand. You ask why we hid our strength. We hid it because we knew you would react exactly as you are reacting now. With fear, with anger, with suspicion. We knew you would try to limit us, contain us, treat us as a threat to be managed rather than an ally to be welcomed." Tiho stepped forward, and several council members flinched. "But here is the truth. We have possessed the power to conquer this galaxy for over a century. We could have dominated every species, claimed every world, made ourselves masters of everything. We did not. We stayed in our corner of space. We traded peacefully. We bothered no one." He let that sink in. "And when innocents needed help, we came. Not for conquest, not for glory, not for resources. We came because they were suffering and we could stop it. That is who we are. That is who we have always been. We did not hide our strength because we were planning to attack you. We hid it because we knew you were not ready to understand it." He turned to look at every species representative in the room. "Now you understand. We are not the monsters the galaxy fears. We are the monsters that monsters fear. And we will protect anyone who asks, no matter how the council feels about it." He left the chamber without waiting for a response. Back on Colony 7, life was slowly returning to normal. The Velori were beginning to rebuild, helped by human engineers who seemed to understand instinctively how to fix things. Human food had been distributed throughout the colony, strange and overwhelming flavors that the Velori found surprisingly delicious. Tallies, the young scientist who had sent the original distress signal, found Dr. Sora Han in the observatory. The human was looking up at the stars with a thoughtful expression. "May I speak with you?" Tallies asked. Sora turned and smiled. "Of course, what would you like to know?" "I want to understand your people. I want to learn about Earth, about human history, about how creatures from such a terrible world became so kind." "That is a long story." "I have time." Tallies paused. "I want to come to Earth, to study humans, to show my people that there is nothing to fear." Sora looked at the young Velori for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I would be honored to sponsor your visit, but I should warn you. Earth is very different from what you are used to. The gravity alone will be challenging." "I know, but I faced the Ravok. I think I can face some heavy gravity." Sora laughed. It was a warm sound that filled the observatory. "I think you are going to fit in just fine." On the observation deck of the Hanel, Admiral Tiho stood watching the stars. The fleet was preparing to leave, its mission complete. The colony was safe. The Ravok were scattered. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Myra, Elder Kiva's daughter, had come up to thank him personally. She stood beside him now, small and fragile and alive because of what humans had done. "Will you come back," she asked, "if we need help again?" Tiho looked down at her with gentle eyes. "Always. That is what humans do. We answer when someone calls. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We fight the monsters so that peaceful people can live without fear. The galaxy still fears you. Perhaps, but perhaps now they will also respect us. And perhaps they will understand that fear is not the only thing humans inspire." He smiled. "We also inspire hope." The Armada departed the next day. The Valori watched from the surface as 3,000 ships rose into the sky and vanished into hyperspace, leaving nothing behind but memories and gratitude. On the hull of the flagship Hanwell, the original message had been replaced with something new, something that would be visible to every species the fleet encountered on its journey home. 3 words that would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. "You are not alone." And far across the stars, on countless worlds, other species looked up at the sky and began to wonder. Perhaps the Deathworlders were not so terrible after all. Perhaps the monsters of Earth were exactly the kind of monsters the galaxy needed. Perhaps, for the first time in a very long while, the future was brighter than the past.